All right. Here we go. Welcome back. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome back to the What? You know what? I had this open, and of course, something happened, and I closed the script again. It's just like impossible.
Everything was going so well. We were on the right foot.
I connected to DAL. We started the space. Everything was working. But yes, welcome back, everyone, to the Created Economy. This is our weekly interview series where we interview voices and leaders from the creator economy at large. And we discuss topics that are relevant to builders, creators, and that bridge that goes in between the two of them. We do go live on Wednesdays at 2 p.m. Pacific time. What's that? I don't remember how to do Eastern. 5 p.m. Eastern time now.
At 3. It's always 3. Yeah, at 3.
Feel free, though, to tune in. If you want full show details, upcoming episodes to RSVP, head over to created.show. It's the official show page for the Created Economy. We also are streaming live on Facebook, YouTube, Twitch, Twitter Spaces currently. So if you like video or audio, pick your poison. But we will say that the best place to be is here in the studio with us, because you get a chance to come and ask your questions, be on stage, and all the other fun things that go along behind the scenes. We do post longer form content, though we don't post enough of it, Ken, over at createdeconomy.com. But Ken's about to get resolution. On. Yeah, New Year's resolution.
2023.
Got a little while to figure it out. But yeah, and of course, I forgot to bring the deck up. So
that's another New Year's resolution.
And another one. Yes, but just remembering how to do these things, so it's so powerful if we can get it right. But yeah, welcome. This is episode number 25 today, which is, I think, super amazing. Wait, am I doing the wrong one? I love when I click inside of there thinking I'm touching that. Episode number 25. Do join us, by the way. We do a lot of content every week. It's about to be a lot less content for the next couple of weeks with the holidays and all the other fun things going on. However, on Tuesdays, we do office hours. And if no one shows up, then I ramble for 20, 30 minutes by myself, which I find mortifying and horrible. So please show up for the office hours on Tuesdays. Wednesdays is obviously this show where we do our interviews with our friends and leaders from the space. And on Fridays, Ken and I do the news, mostly Ken doing the news and me reacting to it. And so it's a great way to get all of the top news coming out of the creator economy. So please tune in by all means. Do give us a follow as well. We're Created Economy everywhere you can find us, YouTube, Twitch, Twitter, and Flipboard. Ken does curate all the links at Flipboard, and it's not just because he works there. Oh, crap. I forgot to put a QR code. I knew I was doing but yeah, we do have AMA is the official coin of the show. It is a rally-based social token. Feel free to drop by and get some. I will drop this in here before we end. But the link will be over. It's over at bit.ly/AMA-drop-12. But who are we kidding? All of you know the pattern already, so you've already been claiming your tokens. But feel free to go over there. It is free money. I do give it away every week to our loyal listeners and viewers, so we encourage you to go grab some and be part of the community. Now, without further ado, oh crap, one more slide. We do have a Slack. I cannot remember this. I don't know why. I made this deck and I still can't remember the slides. But we do have a Slack. It is a great place, actually. It's a fun community. It's a bunch of builders, some investors, and a few creators as well. And we try to, get together and help each other and support each other in the process of trying to build communities and companies for the creator economy. So you can scan that to get over to there. I knew I put that. All right. See what's going on here? So welcome. One more thing. We are lucky and fortunate to have Paul joining us today. And so without further ado, let's just take this out of here. Paul, it is a pleasure to see you here. Thanks. How are you doing?
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me. Yeah, I'm great.
And I know before we jump into this in the intense and insane way, Ken has like 100 questions he's already written up for you. But could you give us a quick introduction about who you are, where you are now, and why we thought it would be such a good fit? Because I know we connected and it seemed like an instant opportunity.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. So I'm Paul Bakaus. I lead the creator relations team at Google. Which is a relatively young team overall, I would say. Maybe like a year and a half old now. And that's Google and not YouTube, right? So a lot of people that ask me first is, oh, so are you YouTube? No, I'm not YouTube. YouTube, of course, is another really great platform that we bring content creators to. But Google also has a content platform that we bring people to, and that's the web. And we figured that for the longest time, we've been benefiting from content creators that have been providing us content for our search engine on the web. And we thought it was about time to give back in terms of having an outreach program, helping people make it on the web, figuring out how it can solve problems for the creator economy, whether that's 1,000 true fans or monetization or passive income, etc. And yeah, so that's the mission that I'm on, I would say. And yeah, I'm based in San Francisco. That's where I'm dialing in from today. I'm very excited to chat.
Cool. So,
how long have you been? Just real quick, I was going to say, how long have you been with Google for Creators?
Since it exists. So
okay.
I've created the thing because it didn't exist before.
Awesome.
And if you have noticed, I noticed the Google Web Creators tag on the slides. And we actually, since we set this up, I think we rebranded to Google for Creators, because one thing we've realized is that a lot of creators, when they hear like website, they tune out immediately. Like, oh wow, this is super old school. Like, I don't like this. But then if you talk to them about the problems that they're having, like, oh, I don't make enough passive income, or I don't know how to connect directly with my audience, then they absolutely care. So the door into this whole thing is always a problem that a creator has, and then the solution is often some form of web presence. So yeah, we rebranded to Google for Creators. That effort is a relatively new effort. I've been with Google a couple of years. I've been leading a variety of DevRel teams, and I've been organizing conferences, running roadshows, social, everything that I would say is one-to-many communication, and also strategic advisors, advising into the company, sort of the bridge between developers and Google, for a couple of years now. And now what I've done is basically I've switched out the audience under the hood. So as opposed to doing all of these things for developers, we realized maybe in the 90s, it used to be the case that developers and content creators were the same audience on the web, right? You would guys kind of hack together your GeoCities page. But nowadays, that's not so true anymore. Content creators are often non-technical and are trying to figure out their own path. And so far, we've largely had technical guidance for them. And that complicates things quite a bit. So like the on-ramp to the web is a big problem that we're trying to tackle and make easier.
So in terms of the, back in the olden days, rather, I mean, everyone who is building a GeoCities site, or they're building their own like traditional website, before we had the Weebly's and the Squarespace and the Wix, there were like people were infatuated with SEO, rightfully so, and it's still a thing from an SEO standpoint, and that is a great exposure to get onto Google. What is why you started the Google for Creators program, but what was that jumping off point, right? I know you talked about it a little bit in terms of what you're doing, but I'm kind of like thinking like, what is special about creators versus launching this for the everyday developer, not the hardcore developers, right? But the, like, hi, I want to set up my website so I could do shopping, or, set up my own online shopping, do e-commerce, or set up my portfolio or my blog, and I want to get noticed. Like, what kind of speciality are you giving to creators there?
Well, first of all, I should mention that we think of creators as inclusive of, let's say, bloggers. Mm-hmm. So, your bloggers out there are creators. And interestingly, a lot of that crowd is trying to bridge into Instagram and TikTok and Twitter, right? Whereas what we call maybe more modern creators that are starting now on TikTok, let's say, are also wondering, like, should I have a website for branding purposes or for passive income or whatever? So I would say that is a very broad set of individual creators that we're targeting. I would say that's distinct from, let's say, a big publisher like Washington Post or CNN. We've been supporting them in a variety of ways over the years at Google. with maybe individual partnership efforts, that are maybe one-to-one. But that doesn't really scale for millions and millions of creators. So we need to make sure that we approach this a little bit differently with content creators, the same way we do it with developers. The other thing that I would say is that I was kind of I had this aha moment a couple of years ago when I realized that I probably will not be able to bring content back on the web in a big way for like new generations if I'm going to target the developers. Because I've been part of the web developer community for a very long time. And what they care about is not to create a new blog. What they care about is pushing the envelope in terms of like, let's build the next Photoshop, or let's, do something crazy in WebAssembly, or let's build something in the browser with Metaverse. But blogging or content creation is a little bit too limiting for a career developer on the web, I would say, to really affect a big change here. And I think the pressure needs to come from the people that want it the most, and that's the creators. And so we felt that we need to talk to that different crowd. One thing that I will also say is that for Google search, of course, Google search mission is to make the world, to organize the world's information and make it available to everyone. And if a lot of that information is happening in content silos and is inaccessible, that's we can't actually give it to people. So there's a vested interest that we bring. If there's a creator that is out there creating amazing content that more people tune into than CNN, people will search for that creator on Google search, and we should have a good result page. So that's another aspect here.
I actually had a related question, I guess, to this, because and being in the creator space for some time and talking to folks, one of the things I've heard often is, and I think you're absolutely right, like a lot of creators kind of gloss over the web part, right? Like most of them don't even, for example, have like their own website or presence, right? Like I'm curious why you think, the two things really, I guess, like one is, why do you think the web is so overlooked, I guess, from the creator point of view? But more importantly is, and a little bit of the tail end of what you were saying there is like, why do you think it's coming back? Right? Like, like it seems like we're moving to like these edge cases and whatnot. And I think I know the answer, but discovery may be some part of it. Right. But I'm kind of curious from your point of view, like, from Google making this effort, which I think is an important one, those feel like two big hurdles to get over, right? Like sort of like, from a macro point of view.
Yeah, totally. I think why it's overlooked is an interesting one, and there's a whole bunch of things in that area. One of them is it's quite hard to get started. So the on-ramp to the web is a difficult one, especially if you don't have the technical chops to really get into SEO. And there's also a broad availability of solutions here, right? You go from like link in bio sites, which may be the most basic way to get onto the web, to like full-blown WordPress or Drupal or like self-hosted website, and then you're on your own and you have to figure things out by yourself. So and then there's everything in between, Wix, Squarespace, and so on. And so figuring out what to do is quite hard. Figuring out which of these paths sets you up for success, and a lot of people give up before that. That's, I think, one aspect. And the other one is that a lot of content creation shifted to a more visual medium. Right? So the web never really did this transition in the right way. So we've started with long form text content, and we never really, there was a form of art directed blogging in the 2010s. I don't know if you remember that time, and when the Verge did this really well, Tumblr, yes, but like the Verge used to do these really amazing, extravagant, like art directed blog posts, about the latest iPhone, stuff like that. And I don't think it's I don't think it's a thing anymore, but there's just a lack of innovation that happened on the web in the last couple of years when it comes to content. And I think a lot of people ultimately assume the web is old school bloggers, and it's not for me.
Yeah.
And I think that's one reason why people are not jumping on it. Now, why it's coming back is control, ownership, independence, and most importantly, sustainability. Because we've been talking to hundreds and hundreds of creators, and many of them are talking about the same things that are bothering them. And you might have seen like the new study that Vibely did on burnout. And then, New Creator Manifesto was interesting too, where they talked a little bit about this. But burnout is a significant problem of the creator economy, I would say.
Yeah.
And we talk a lot about the fact that it's happening, but not maybe a lot about the solutions that are possible. And I think one of the biggest solutions here is shifting active income to passive income. And unfortunately, on most platforms today, most money you make with active income, right? Now, of course, on YouTube, let's say, you can make money with ads too. But I would say on many platforms, primarily your income comes from brand deals. And I think generating passive income is much easier on a space that you control in some form or fashion. You could start with something like Patreon, of course. But if you want to build your own membership platform that connects all the dots, having a website that ties it all together is super useful. So it's interesting. We often start with the same talking points. And whenever I talk to a creator, I ask them, what's your problem? Why are you struggling? And they repeat the same kind of things. They say, I don't know how long I can do this, right? I need to create 3 videos each day. I don't know, how can I change this?
Yeah.
And then we go into potential solutions to this.
And it almost seems like, to Greg's question, I think it's like these creators are going to TikTok, to YouTube, to Facebook, Instagram, because of the network effect, right? It's that easy way to be discovered, right? It's like I can post something onto YouTube or do a YouTube Shorts, and then, oh my God, I get like hundreds of thousands of views, if only, right? But then you go into the web, it's like, how do you do that? Then it becomes very organic, and it's like, how do you don't have anybody to do it. You have to do a lot more of the hard work, so to speak, right? You're assuming that if you build it, they will come. It's a lot easier if you are on these network effects. But Paul, I'm curious if I'm summarizing this right. I mean, as you're talking about what Google's doing, not YouTube, but we take YouTube out of this, but the social network powers that exist, right? You have, on one hand, YouTube, you have TikTok, you have Instagram / Facebook / Meta, whatever they want to call themselves, and Snapchat, and they've become the internet incarnate in the modern age, right? And it's like, this is where we're living our entire lives. This is the oasis of our time. But then you're like, you venture out, you're like, wait, there's a whole lot more of this internet, and it's like stepping into this frontier, this barren frontier. You're like, where is everything? Okay, there's a tumbleweed. Like, oh, but it's like, I can set up my own plot of land here, right? I can, it's that final scene from Far and Away where Tom Cruise and Nicole Kidman plant their stake in the flag in the new territory, and that's where and creators like, this is where I want to set up my presence. And you're right in terms of ownership, right?
Yeah.
And like, they need some help there to make the ground fertile and to grow and prosper. And I mean, out of all the search engines that are there, I think like Google kind of has that reach, and as opposed to, I mean, Yahoo's not been in the game for a while. None of the early other search engines are really doing that much, and focused just on search right now. They don't have the broad reach. So what is the strategy there for Google to kind of really help the creators to have a firm ground, like, outside of the social networks?
I would say one of the things that I really want to be clear about is that we're not proposing to stop being on social media. Like, right. Basically, we're not saying, okay, shut down your whatever account and go all independent on the Web3, right? Now, there are some people in our economy and ecosystem that are proposing this. I think it's too early.
Yes.
And I think it's incredibly risky to do that, right? Like throwing away the hundreds of thousands of followers that you build up on social media doesn't seem like the right way to do things. I would say rather, and then there's the other camp, right? So like the people that run brand studios and brand companies, they're like, no, don't bite the hand that feeds you. And that's true too with the platforms, but I think it needs to be somewhere in the middle where we all need to realize what is social media good for and what is it not good for. And what it is good for instance, it's absolutely great at growth, right? Building an audience. It's great to get out there, and it's much better at this, to be fair, than I would say the web is currently. Now, you can make it as a blogger. Let's say your classic career path is blogging. You can make it. You can start blogging. It will probably take you a year to 3 to build your presence on whatever search engine, because that's just how long it takes right now. And then, of course, you have your own content portfolio. You have a lot of passive income opportunity then, but it takes a long time. I think for most content creators that are already big on YouTube or Instagram or TikTok, that's not the right path, right? To basically start completely from scratch. The better path is to figure out, oh, okay, I have this audience here that I grew. How can I funnel this audience to paying, returning customers and fans that I have a direct relationship with? Because right now, if you can't just, I mean, you probably heard this a bunch of times on the podcast before, but of course, like the classical argument is, if you have 1 million followers on Instagram, good luck trying to export the email addresses to sell them on your online course, right? It doesn't work. You can't take them to some other platform easily. And that's true for every platform. And so we really want to encourage people to think of that social media audience as a lead gen platform, and then really bring them somewhere where you can convert them into loyal customers, fans, and then ultimately passive income.
I hope you're successful, because I've been trying to convince people of this for years now.
I hope so too.
By the way, so I think we fundamentally agree, and we've discussed this in the past many times, but I do believe like this 2.5 approach is a lot more sensible, for sort of most people today, right? Actually, still most are probably still lean a little closer to 2 than 3, right? But I guess from your side, I'm curious about sort of maturity in the creator space itself, right? Because I feel like one of the recurring themes here, and I'm just curious your take as you've seen it in the adoption side. I would say, for example, the people who were successful on the web likely were a higher sophistication type of user, right? Like either technically sophisticated or like business sophistication, right? Or acumen sort of rolled up. Creator economy is like an emergent class of entrepreneur, right? And so it can literally be an overnight success, like one of the rare cases that this is true, right? Where you suddenly find yourself immersed in sort of opportunity and the need to turn it into business. It could be a slow roll. Like last week, I pointed out 4 kind of economic models, like the hobbyist, the hustler, the careerist, and then the company, right? And I'm curious where you're seeing and where you think like Google Creators is trying to attach, like relative to that ecosystem, right? And it's not necessarily a purely linear thing per se, but like I think like the opportunity that we're waiting, all of us are trying to help unlock, is this transition from hustle to career, right? Like sort of bridging this gap where you don't have to do this part-time, because if we can backfill with passive income, and more importantly, we can actually augment and create new kinds of active income, right? How do we do that? Like, what is your sort of take and the maturity and sort of setting timelines or expectations for folks? Like what's the horizon for success look like here, I guess?
Yeah, great question. We are primarily targeting, I would say, what we call the monetizer, the person that actually wants to make money with their creation. And there's a whole lot of other people, of course, right? They're like big brands that are, go beyond the individual creator, and then there are hobbyist creators and enthusiasts that mainly like, you have a hobby, you want to tweet about it from time to time. That audience is probably not really suited for, setting up a website from scratch right now as the first thing that they're doing. And And so right now we're really trying to focus on that sweet spot of creators that wants to make an income from creating content, whether it's full-time or part-time. But yeah, like I think it's really amazing, the explosion of the creator economy, right? I mean, we're seeing it with the companies that are appearing, but we're also seeing it in sheer numbers of creators on the platforms. And the pandemic, of course, has accelerated this. But then I was at VidSummit a couple of weeks ago, and I talked to people that have large YouTube followings, and I talked to people that have large TikTok followings. And the TikTok crowd, very often they would find overnight success in a week or in a month, right? Like suddenly they have 1 million followers, and now here's the problem: are they mentally prepared for this life? They're not, right? Like if you have 1 million followers, you have 10,000 haters. They have never learned how to deal with haters. They have never learned how to organize a life of a creator, right? How to turn this into a profession. Like this is basically like the early days of Uber, where everyone is very excited, right? And nobody has realized that this is a gig economy, and you have to figure out how to care for yourself, right? And how to sustain this lifestyle, how to pay for health insurance, how to do all the other things that happen in life, right? Because you can't just only create. There was this really interesting interview with Code Miku a while back. I don't know if you've heard of Code Miku. She's like this interesting streamer on Twitch with a 3D character, and it's pretty amazing. But she talked about how in the early days she would forget to go to the bathroom because she was streaming like 12 hours straight or like 14 hours straight or something along those lines. And I go back to this and I remember, like, yeah, this is not what we should encourage. We should figure out how to help people, how to turn it into a sustainable profession. And I think this is on all of us as a community to figure out, right? We need to learn how we can turn this into a profession.
So rather than just kind of diving head deep into like, oh, I'm going to go and I want to be a creator, so let me just dive into TikTok and create all these, videos, and then get inundated by, hey, I have like 1 million followers, but then get inundated by all the haters and have to deal with this. Oh my God, they're shaming me for this, or they're yelling at me for that, or how do I do this, brand deals and everything like that. Instead of just worrying about the network effects, maybe the step for creators is like, all right, take a break. You're running before you're crawling. And so you set up your presence on the web. Like, one, you don't have to worry about like, oh, what do I want to, you don't have to worry about, you're basically future-proofing yourself, right? So you're saying, okay, I want to create a subscription list. So I can let me set up a database so people can subscribe. So then in the future, if I want to do newsletter, I can, extract them. And then you could work on honing your business first, your craft, business craft, passion, whatever you want to call it. And then when you've kind of established that little, your fortress of solitude, if you will, then you can take your dabble into like a TikTok or whatever platform you think to help augment and to extend your reach. Is that kind of,
I mean, that's one way to do it. I will say that I think in the early stages of being a creator, a lot of people would probably lose steam if they started with a website first, because you kind of start a website, you don't have an audience yet, and you're like, what now, right? I mean, like, you look at your analytics and like nothing is happening. And so I think you need that feedback loop at first. Something that TikTok has solved for really, really well, right? You need to have that momentum to want to create, and I think there's something there that kickstarts your career. But at some point, yes, you definitely have to worry about not going too fast. I would say another thing here that's important to call out is this obsession of a stardom, right? And fame. Because if you want to be a celebrity, then all power to you. Go for it, right? Like, go on that journey and build like an empire, right? And become the next Mr. Beast or Kylie Jenner. But if you be okay with 1,000 fans that support you financially, right, and to sustain this business, maybe you don't need to race after stardom. Maybe you can find a niche where, as opposed to a really broad thing, like, let's say, DIY, a lot of people kind of like what you do. You go really narrow with something like woodworking, right? And people actually love what you do. You have a smaller subset of fans, but they absolutely love you for what you do, and therefore invest in you. And you know, if that's an option, try it out, because I think there's a lot of potential there. And even the brands like micro influencers. So I think there's a point here.
I have a question, I guess, because the way you described it, Paul, was kind of like doing this web part after, right?
Mm-hmm.
It strikes me as couldn't, so for example, like I'm a big fan of AMP, right? Like I think AMP is really cool, right? Like, and I like what it's done, and like I like that it can manifest like a pretty visual experience, like fairly easily, right? Like, I guess I'm curious, like, is there an effort or an approach to sort of also start you with the web better, right? Like, so YouTube gives you arguably a pretty crappy presence, right? Like that seems like a jumping off point to like a richer presence, right? Like,
yeah,
like, it's a very form field driven kind of thing, but it doesn't allow, besides the video expressive, it doesn't necessarily allow for stretching your legs or bringing together any of your other presence, which would provide more surface area for indexing and understanding you as a person and things like that. So I'm just kind of curious, like, yes, there's obviously a path of like potentially add the web post facto, kind of like after you establish in a platform, let's say, right? But are there efforts to do the opposite, or sort of to help you start better as opposed to like starting later?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the only reason why we're optimizing for this other audience that already has a presence on social media is because we don't have all the answers for, what you just talked about yet. But yeah, that's the aspiration. We call this the cold start problem. Right now, it's
book by Andrew Lee. I just came out, I believe, called The Cold Start Problem, by the way.
Oh yes, interesting. Yeah, but that's really what it is, right? And companies like TikTok have really solved for that cold start problem, where the algorithm rewards you very quickly with a bunch of views, and then the idea is basically the platform trusts you until they don't, and we kind of don't trust you until you prove yourself on search right now. And so I think there's a lot of opportunity for us to change that and to improve it. I don't have anything to announce today, unfortunately, but this is a problem that we are acutely aware of, and we want to find solutions for. So yeah, totally agree that we should make that easier. I
believe recently you started indexing Instagram. Is that true, or am I misremembering that?
I'm not sure, actually.
There was some news I thought about you finally being able to index it, but also I guess like also brings to bear, there's amazing technology at Google, like some of the best transcription technology, et cetera. I was always surprised, like there's been image search, but it doesn't seem to like leverage that ability in a meaningful way, like a non-intent driven sort of search way. But like, it feels like Google could create a lot about me by the things it's discovered about me, and then just let me edit down to a better presence, right? Then, as opposed to like building up to one, right?
Yeah, completely agree. And one of the things that we, if you wanted to see some of the progress, some of the early days of progress that we're making towards this, like Google Discover, you should take a look at that, because that's basically our like non-intentful feed that highlights you a lot of content. And ironically, I show Google Discover to a lot of creators, and they're like, I never heard of Google Discover. So we're doing a really bad making Discover discoverable, and we need to do a better job. But it's really like the swipe from the swipe on your Android, and you get to that screen on your home screen, or open the Google app on your iPhone. And so one thing that we've done there is, for instance, to integrate web stories. So web stories are built on AMP, and are bringing the traditional story format that consumers love to the web. So these are stories that you create, you own, and we created this really nice visual carousel on Discover that highlights stories and kind of bridges the gap between like long form text content on the web and like social media content that's in a walled garden. And then also having a presence on Google without having to have like a full-blown website. That's another one, right? Or without having to start a website first. So we of course have the knowledge panels on search, but one of the things that we've been starting to bring to Chrome recently is revitalizing RSS. So not bringing Google Reader back. Don't get too excited.
Come on, bring it back.
I know this is like number one thing I hear after I talk about RSS. But no, like we made it so that you can follow websites and follow people directly in Chrome, right? And once you click the follow thing on your new tab page, you get a feed of your subscriptions. So we're making it easier to follow people on the web, and yeah, expect to see more of that in the future.
So
very cool.
I think it's absolutely fascinating to hear what you're doing, Paul, especially your team. You know, it's because I think you're right. I think a lot of people are, when they think about creators in Google, it's going to be your sister company, YouTube, because it's like, oh, there's other things. Like Google has had its has had its shot at social, you know, with you know, we won't go that far, but we know about those type of things. Is there a opportunity for Google to kind of like, as you're thinking about helping creators, right? And I know you're talking about Google, Google for Creators is specific to the web. Are you building additional tools? I know you talked about the Discover, you talked about RSS, and are there potentially new tools that could be coming that we might see at like a future Google I/O, or that just kind of is released to the wild? And how should, you know, and what are you hearing from creators and saying, hey, this is what I want to have, or this is something I really want to pursue? You know, because I'm not necessarily want to do, oh, let me go onto TikTok and hope my TikTok videos get indexed, or my tweets get indexed, or blah blah blah. It's like, how do I show up in a organic and prominent manner on Google?
Yeah, the answer is yes. We're building a whole lot of tools, but also I cannot talk about most of them.
But or you just can't talk about them at all.
Oh, I can't talk about them yet. Like I can never talk about future products that are unreleased. But there are some that we have released. So, for instance, Search Console Insights is an offshoot of Search Console. Search Console is this like quite technical, complicated tool, or at least complicated when you're not technical, to monitor your search performance and your SEO. And I recommend it to everyone who owns a domain. It's really, really powerful. You, for instance, can see what kind of people are searching for and landing on your website. But it's overwhelming as a creator. And Search Console Insights is basically, you know, an at-a-glance view of this from a creator perspective. So that's just one type of tool. And then there are tools around monetization. So we launched Subscribe with Google a while back. Subscribe with Google makes it very easy to have some sort of membership to, in this case, a publisher. And so we worked with a lot of publishers to bring this to market. And one of the cool things is that if you're already authenticated into your Google account, it's very frictionless. And so now next up would be to bring this to individual creators and bloggers and everyone. So these are two examples. There are a lot more that I hopefully can talk about in the next couple of months. But yeah, we're definitely thinking about it.
I am curious, I guess, just how the operating model, I guess, internally though, is it sort of arm's length with the other groups, or is it highly collaborative across, you know, because I imagine input from one team, maybe like output to another, et cetera. So I'm just curious, like, or do you just work through your own APIs and you're like, hey, I can do only like we can get done?
Yeah. So, I mean, in my case, I'm responsible for the outreach and for some of the strategy work together with my teams. But then there's a whole lot of engineering teams in Search and in Chrome that we're working with. So Search and Chrome, I would say, are the main stakeholders here because they care greatly about content on the web. And then on the YouTube side, we're starting to collaborate on a variety of things. So, for instance, conferences or, you know, stuff like that. But it's I would say it's early days. We're still figuring out how to create a narrative together that benefits both of us. I would say when you look at the Google for Creators program, the one big difference is that if YouTube does outreach, they want to bring you to YouTube, and that makes a lot of sense, right?
Mhm.
So this is not a negative or positive statement. But in our case, we want to make ourselves useful in a much more broad sense to any creator on any platform. And so we kind of want to be the Fred Rogers of the creator economy, if that makes sense. Build up trust and help people, because one of the positions that we're in that I really find attractive is that, let's say I convince Ken to have an amazing website, right?
Good luck with it.
I mean, maybe you already have one, right?
No.
But I mean, I convince you to have an amazing website, and you decide you don't trust Google, you don't want to use Google Analytics, you don't want to use our, AdSense, whatever. You don't want to use any of our tools. Now, here's the cool thing: we still win, regardless, right? If I convince you to build a website, it gets indexed on Google Search, it improves our search engine and Google Discover, and we win. So I don't even have to sell you on anything that we're building. I just have to sell you on the idea of being on an open platform. And that's really cool, in my opinion, because I don't like being a sales guy. I haven't been a sales guy ever, actually. Never worked in a sales department, and I cannot sell something that I don't believe in. So, like, you will never hear me talk about some random product that I don't care about.
So you are an advocate for the idea, the philosophy, the profession. That just so happens to be a representative for a company that has an involvement in that space.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, my mission aligned with Google, and that's why I joined Google. Because even before Google, every startup, every project that I worked at, I tried to advance the web in some form or fashion. Because I thought, not because I love HTML or CSS or JavaScript or whatever, but because the web is the only open platform in the world that we have at the size it's at. And I thought that was extremely cool and powerful. So the first I did was to basically write the web to our wave and create frameworks and libraries that made it much easier for developers to participate. I helped with AMP for a couple of years because they wanted to make it easier for publishers to build fast, user-friendly sites again. And then I dabbled in gaming for a while, trying to bring games to the web. So everything I did was to open gates, I would say, for more people to participate in the open. And that's also why I'm at Google. So because these interests of mine align with Google, I'm really passionate about it.
So I want to ask this kind of question, and I know we probably have time for maybe two or three more questions between us. But out of all these, you're talking about all these these tools that creators are able to use within Google, and then Google's going to be rolling out or launching new features in the coming months that you're unfortunately not able to talk about. But what's your advice to these creators who are looking at saying, oh, okay, Google has this Google Discover or this new Search Console or whatever. How should they be thinking about those? Because there's obviously some sort of skepticism in terms of just in terms of new technologies in general. How should they be thinking, like, okay, besides jumping on board because Google, hey, it's Google, of course. But if somebody else comes on board and somebody else comes out and says, hey, like Greg comes out with a new Search Console, whatever, for his company, they're like, oh, which one do I choose? Right? Aside from, brand names taken out of the equation. Like, what's your advice to them on thinking about what tool is best for them?
Very good question. I would say the first thing that you should think about is, will this make my life more sustainable? Will this just suck away more of my energy, or is the ROI so that I can reclaim more of my time and energy by using this thing? I think that's really, really important at a very high level, right? So if it's a way for me to generate more passive income, or if it's a way for me to automate a task that usually would take 5 hours to complete to half an hour, maybe that's worthwhile. And then there's some more in-depth considerations. For instance, one really good test would be, let's say you find a website provider that can give you a website, and they say, well, we're going to give you a website for free. It's going to be great. We have all the things and bells and whistles in there, but then they want like 10% of your cut, right? They want a 10% cut of all of your revenue, and they don't give you access to the audience. Is that a good deal? I would say no. It's not a good deal, right? I mean, there are a whole lot of web hosters out there that allow you to build websites really quickly and make it very hard to export your content too, right? So you start on that one site hosting website, and you build your whole brand, and then you realize you can never move out of it again, right? That's a really unfortunate position. So like, I would also encourage you to figure out if you start a new tool, can you move on from that tool again, or can you upgrade out of that tool if it doesn't fulfill what you need anymore? And oftentimes creators come to that realization too late. So it's really good to look at it early before you make a decision.
Well, I guess it's also hard because, I mean, even as technologists, when we build things, we don't always know or anticipate all of our needs either, right? And so, especially like if you're not technical, I could see how you can easily run afoul of sort of constraints that maybe you didn't anticipate. Well, I did see Roberto, you were here. I'm not sure if you're still here, but I think you had a question. Roberto does have a very interesting company called RoboAmp, which actually, I believe, like helps auto create like AMP style interfaces or content. Roberto, did you have a question for Paul?
Yes. Thank you so much for the plug. We have been big fans of AMP so much that we create a company around it. Awesome. The one-line pitch is you just copy and paste one line of code, and our algorithm automatically rewrites your HTML into AMP HTML without you having to do anything else. That's the pitch of the company. But I'm very passionate about this subject, Paul. I have this conviction that I think that being online, it's not enough. Probably that was enough 10 years ago, and now being online, you also need to be fast. We also know how Google prioritize fast websites in terms of SEO. So my question to you is, how important do you think that new technologies like sign exchange, for instance, could be for third-party vendors like companies like ours, where we can speed up your website and be served from our server, but being cryptographically signed like their origin? How do you think that market might evolve if your vision becomes true, where more content creators have their own presence? How do you think that market for third-party vendors that could explode the web performance issues, how do you think that could evolve?
Great question. I would say, and by the way, for context, signed exchanges is a way to decouple the hosting from the delivery of web pages. So you can deliver, like, let's say a cache or a CDN could deliver the page for you, and it doesn't have to be on the same server. And that makes it generally a lot faster, right? Because, for instance, Google could deliver that website to the end user without having to ping the original server. I would say this goes back to the supply-demand problem here, where if there's not a lot of demand from creators to match the user experience that they get on, let's say, Instagram, then there's no supply, right? And there's no reason to create that supply and to have third-party companies create means to make websites really fast, for instance. And I think this is also some of the problems that AMP ran into, where we've been generally trying to have traditional web developers become fans of our solution, and that didn't really succeed at grand scale, because we basically took their toys away, right? We said, like, look, we think that the web, like that, the fact that everything goes on the web is both beautiful and really, really problematic. To give you a very basic example, right now, if you're building a website, you can choose where that menu is, right? Like you can put your menu at the top, at the bottom, on the right, on the left, whatever. You can structure the menu whatever way you want, right? You can make it fly in, appear on a click. Is that a good thing for consumers? I would say no. It's never a good thing, right? I mean, like a standardized menu that is at the same place every time would be much, much better, but would severely limit the creative control of the website creator. Now, this is an extreme case, and we haven't done this with AMP, right? With AMP, you have pure total creative freedom. But it goes a little bit into the issues that we run into with the web developer community. It's like building a modern society, right? You tell people to put on seatbelts, and they rally, right? And they're like, what, seatbelts? And I think this is the frustrating part with AMP. We've always tried to find that correct, like the compromise that would make the web modern enough to feel like it can compete with walled gardens. Oh, wow, we have a special guest. And I don't know, like it's a hard battle, to be honest, because with a new platform, with a new developer platform that starts from scratch, and you build in these constraints from the get-go, right? If you're uploading something onto Instagram, like, how often do you worry about performance? Well, never, because it's completely abstracted away, right? And you understand the contract that you make before you walk into it. On the web, because everything goes, it's very easy to scale back and normalize some of the experiences. And I think the only way we can do this is by creating demand from creators. So, we're seeing, of course, a whole lot of creator economy startups pop up. The link in bio sites are the most prominent example, of course, right? They exist because they're solving a particular problem that was big enough so that it created demand. And I think we can go beyond that. So we just need to create more demand by doing the right outreach to creators.
We do always ask this one last question, Paul, which I think it'd be great to just also hear, and it's related to what you were just saying, is, I guess, from the builder's point of view, to the creator economy sort of entrepreneurs, do you have any advice for them, like thinking about maybe observations or gaps that maybe you perceive that maybe aren't like in the purview of like what Google's trying to solve for today, but that you just kind of commonly hear of experience to your own as a creator?
Oh boy, yes. So this is a great question. I would say if you look at the creator economy maps that are floating around with the hundreds and hundreds of companies appearing, one of the biggest problems here is that creators are extremely overwhelmed with all the options and don't know what to use what for and how to combine them, right? So the best you can do as a new creator economy startup is to really nail your pitch. Like, why should a creator use your software? What is the problem that it's solving? And unfortunately, I've seen quite a few companies that are trying to solve the general website problem. Oh, we give creators a website, and don't worry about it. We like to build out functionality over time, right, and add stuff to it. I think most of those startups don't realize how hard it is to build a CMS from scratch. I've done this several times. It's very hard. And then you're racing against time, right? You become an agency over time because you kind of try to fulfill this for creator X, this one for creator Y, and it becomes really, really difficult. So I would say try to focus on what particular problem that you can solve. Make sure that whatever you build can connect to the ecosystem in other ways. So for instance, if you build a monetization product, create a WordPress plugin, right? I mean, Coffee did this. The first thing they did is they created a WordPress plugin. I mean, it made a lot of sense. Create ways to integrate with each other so that the creator economy can come together as opposed to building your own empires after each other. I think that would be my biggest advice.
So in the state of the landscape, I mean, we're kind of like in this wild west, and I keep saying that to every time we're doing these interviews, like the space is this wild west. Kind of like to kind of bring some sort of semblance of order to everything. You're saying that instead of me going off and venturing and saying, oh, I'm going to do my own, link in bio type of thing, maybe I should find an existing platform perhaps, or some like that might have some vulnerability, and kind of build upon that, like almost like I don't want to say like a leech or anything like that, but kind of like to help supplement or augment what's being done there, and then kind of branch off from there.
Yeah, a little bit like this, but I would say really try to solve a problem together with the that is compatible. Like basically, if you're a sous chef, or if you're like the chef that makes the desserts, right? You have to make sure that your dish is compatible with the 12 other courses, right? You can't just go off on your own and create something completely random.
Yeah.
So or like basically outdo everyone else.
You've never been to Ken's restaurant, have you?
Everything is no semblance of anything, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
but like creators will not evaluate your product in a vacuum. They will look at everything that's out there on the market, right? And unless maybe you meet them at some dinner and you can get to them before everyone else. Maybe that's your strategy. But other than that, you are competing with all the other companies. So try to find your own niche, your own problem that you can solve, and go all in on that.
I love it.
Wow.
Super. Yeah, this has been a great convo. I expected a lot of great things. I would say though, you had me from the beginning because I never thought about the developer centricness of the web, I guess. That just never really, the web just seemed like, and I've been on the web since, I guess like 94 or something, right? Like, once it like 96 hit though, it felt obvious, right? Like I never thought about it. I've been a web developer, I guess, for a long, long time, but I never actually imagined me as the creator in the web world. So it's a really interesting frame. I just think that I picked up from the beginning, and that was a really nice thread to sort of weave through things.
No, I agree, Greg. But I think it's like Web 2, the Tim O'Reilly Web 2 kind of really overshadowed everything, right? I mean, Web 1 was still very much Google, still very much the web. Everyone's all talking about web. And then the network effects, right? Web 2 and social media kind of just like now everything's built on these existing platforms. And you're like, oh, I forgot there was this giant thing called the rest of the internet. There's stuff outside of Pleasantville that we can go and see and do. And, we don't always have to be on the Facebook app or the YouTube app or TikTok or Instagram or whatever. Like there's other things for us to set up our own routes. So it's been very great hearing about this and kind of being reintroduced, if you will, to the web. And I'm definitely looking forward to seeing how the creator economy flourishes in that space.
Yeah, you and me both.
Yeah, we also need to continue and have that debate about the 2 versus 3. I know Ken's been provoking Matt and I to have a convo on it. So let's work that one out.
Yeah, once we get into the new year, I'd love to talk more. I mean, Paul, there's so much so many gems that you've given us that I want to talk more about this. And certainly, actually, funny thing, Paul, like what we talked about last week on Twitter, our exchange about the investment in the creator. We're going to be talking about that on Friday on our news show. So we'd love to, if you're available, to come on and add your take to it. Love to have you there. But there's other things as well I wanted to talk to you about. But unfortunately, we are out of time.
We are out of time. Yeah, this is a pleasure. Yeah. So many great insights, and I think I do think the opportunity lies it's up right under our nose. It's been there a long time for almost all these things, right? Like all of us who've been paying attention long enough are already aware of what should happen. It's just manifesting those things in the world now. So it's a very interesting time for sure, in so many ways. Well, Paul, thank you so much for spending some time with us today and for sharing your thoughts with the audience. Thank you to Roberto for joining us as well. Congrats on RoboAmp and also for a great question. So we look forward to it. Paul, we'll figure out a way to get you back in here. Definitely to talk Web 2 or 3, but you're always welcome anytime,
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me. This was great.
Likewise.
Thank you. All right, Ken. Well, another good episode under the belt, I guess we would say, right? I guess I
don't know what you old people say.
How those words work?
Under your belt?
Under our belt.
Yeah.
But so we're taking a little bit of a hiatus. We've got some work, next week's the holidays, obviously. So we won't be here next week streaming. On December 8th, we do have Jen, from Backstage VC. Jen works with, I'm blanking. Justin Kahn, right? Yep. And she also runs or started or created the Means of Creation Discord, which is a wonderful resource if you're not already a member of it. And she's been working at sort of the intersection of Web 2 and 3 stuff as well. So I'm really looking forward to that conversation with Jen. December 8th. We do have a bunch. Ken will still, I'm going to be out of the loop for probably not next week, but a little bit of the week after. So Ken will be running the show, but I've already enlisted Abhinav and Arnold to come and harass Ken on air as much as possible.
We'll make it an interesting show somehow.
Yeah, maybe Paul wants to come back and do the news. I mean, I know he's used to only doing a 3-minute show, but maybe he could stretch it out to 30 minutes with us.
We'll figure it all out, but stay tuned.
Stay tuned. It's going to be fun, and we welcome and we look forward. We'll see you on Friday, by the way. So join us for the news this Friday. So bye, everybody. We will see you all soon, and we're looking forward to it. And I appreciate. Thank you once again to Paul for sharing his time and insights with us.
Happy Thanksgiving.
Peace. See you again. Yeah.